Kaya Wanju. My name is Nolan Hunter, a Badi Jawi and Yaru man from the West Kimberley. And I am the co-chair with my co-chair of Reconciliation WA. I acknowledge that I'm standing on Noongar Whadjuk country, and I acknowledge their people.
Kaya Wanju. My name is Deborah Zanella and I am the non-Aboriginal co-chair, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this very special event marking 2024 National Reconciliation Week. We welcome you to this important event to acknowledge the wonderful, beautiful Carol Innes, immediate past co-chair of Reconciliation WA, and the incredible impact that she has left on the reconciliation movement in WA. We do thank you, Carol, for your incredible legacy, for the person that you are, and tonight is about honouring you and your work. Before we commence our program, I'd also like to acknowledge to all the elders, leaders and mob in the room. Could I ask you to do something for me? Could I ask you just to stand, all the Aboriginal people in this room this evening? Thank you. And I'd really just like us to collectively recognise the contribution that Aboriginal people make to this reconciliation journey, but the recognition of them as custodians, beautiful custodians of the land. So would you join me in welcoming them and acknowledging them? If I was Nolan, I'd make you stand all night and pull your leg, but I won't. We do stand in solidarity and unity with you today, and thank you for coming. I also want to acknowledge Uncle Richard Wally, past reconciliation co-chairs. I've already mentioned Carol and Gary Smith. Lovely to see you, Gary. Life member Alan Carter, who I've seen here this evening, the Honourable Justice Matthew Howard, Jacqueline McGowan-Jones, Commissioner for Children and Young People, Director-Generals from multiple state government departments, Carol Innes' family and friends, Danjoo Koorliny's special guests, WA Museum Boulevard Up special guests, National Reconciliation Week partners and Reconciliation WA members and our allies.
So we'll commence this evening with a welcome to country. Uncle Richard Wally, OAM 2021 West Australian Senior Australian of the Year, and also the Order of Australia recipient, Honorary Doctorate and WA Citizen of the Year acknowledgement. On a daily basis, Uncle Richard has guided people and organisations on their journey to reconciliation throughout and cultural awareness throughout.
Thank you.
Kuop Kerlak, Ngara Jirp, Jenang Nunuk, Jeningan Burlu, Wajak Buja, Wiran Buja, Ngara Mort Buja Kaiwa. Mama Jenangara, Nala Karijin, Nadatni, Tatin Karijin Kaiwa. Bobodawan Wangin, Karijin Wangin, Mama Jenang Nunuk. Bobodawan Nunuk, Wart Kuruna Karak Nukuja, Nunuk Mort. Mama Jenang Nunuk Kaiwa, Ngara Kurumot, Nunuk Kurmot, Tatni, Iriak. Barangan jenengan bidi ngala jeda bini wai kaiwai. Bobodawan nunak wot ko nunak kalak, nunak buja nunak mort, mama jenang nunak kaiwa. We ask the good spirit to be with us tonight as we sit here on this wonderful place. It's called Burlu, the traditional name. It's a spiritual place, a place where many stories have been created, and tonight we'll share some more stories. May you share some food and drink and some hospitality that we've done here for many generations, and at the end of the night, take each and every one of you safely home to our families. Just a little short one. If we did the full stories of Carol, we'll be here till 4 in the morning, and then back next week for episode 2 and the following week for 3, because she's achieved so much, and to put into such a memoirs, it's a wonderful thing. So thank you, Carol, for your sisterhood, friendship, camaraderie, and what Carol has done for a long time has spoken about issues that are not necessarily comfortable, very uncomfortable issues, but made you comfortable around her discussing those uncomfortable issues, and we appreciate you for that. So, Mama Jina Ngala Kaya, may the good spirit be with us. Kuop Kerala Kaiwa.
Thank you, Uncle Richard, for your warm and generous welcome, as always. I also acknowledge that Uncle Richard shared a very beautiful and powerful story earlier this week at our National Reconciliation Week breakfast on Wodjumup, or Rottnest Island, and the truth that we are all going to start exploring about the history of that island. So thank you, Uncle Richard. It's been an amazing week. Kaya, and good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening and to see a full house. My name is Jodie Nunn. I'm the CEO of Reconciliation Western Australia, and it's my absolute pleasure, along with my wonderful team who's here this evening and put together this event, to welcome you. Our appreciation must go to our partners also this evening. Wesfarmers, who has supported 3 different memoirs, including Uncle Richard's last year, and prior to that, Fred Chaney's, of which we have available for sale this evening, and also Carol's this evening. And it's wonderful to continue to capture these journeys of our real champions of reconciliation in this state. I also acknowledge Woodside, who have created and supported this event this evening alongside Wesfarmers. I also want to say a special thanks to Lottery West for their ongoing support of the week, and to the Department for Premier Cabinet for their ongoing support of reconciliation in this state. And of course, our wonderful hosts this evening, the West Australian Museum Bullabardup, for hosting us in this stunning venue. And I always chuckle that we host the memoirs in a room with a whale hanging up. There's no connotations there at all, I promise. Of course, our most esteemed guest this evening is Noongar leader Carol Innes, AM, whose reconciliation memoirs have been written in collaboration with the wonderful Victoria Laurie. And I do make a special mention of Vicky this evening, which I know Carol wanted me to. This is her 3rd memoirs she's written with us, and she does it with such diligence and integrity. And I know as you read Carol's thoughts and words on the page, you'll realise the wonderful work of Victoria Laurie. This evening's conversation is going to be hosted by Joanna Trilling from the ABC, who will join us on stage shortly. But first, a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. In the event of an emergency, please follow the guidance of our visitor service officers, who will guide you to the closest emergency exit. All areas of the museum and within a 5-metre radius are strictly non-smoking. Smoking areas are located throughout James Street Mall. The closest bathrooms are just around the corner into the corridor. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to reflect on the powerful theme of National Reconciliation Week this year, now more than ever. And of course, in a post-referendum environment, we have to talk about the fact that whilst we always say reconciliation moves at the speed of trust, we had a massive trust deficit interject into the movement last year, and there is much work to do. And it's a reminder for us all that we have to continue to fight for justice and for the rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we must and continue to do that work on a daily basis. Reconciliation Week should be putting the fire back in our bellies to do the work for the year ahead, and reconciliation work has to be done every day. We need to focus on treaty making and truth-telling. And in fact, we've been talking a lot about that it needs to be more than truth-telling, it needs to be truth-listening. Because of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been telling the truth for 200 years, but we haven't always been ready to listen. We need to create connection. We need to tackle racism. We need to show respect. And more than ever, we need to demonstrate action and hold ourselves accountable, because we need change. Reconciliation at its heart is about walking together. Tonight we will hear from one of the longest standing champions in the movement, and we seek from her words to build hope and solidarity. Carol is a committed advocate for reconciliation, and she has made significant contributions to the recognition, preservation and advancement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, rights and economic opportunities in Western Australia. She served as our co-chair for 7 years, and I had the absolute privilege of working with her for 3 years. And she is a current co-director at Danjoo Koorliny, and I know we have the wonderful team from Danjoo here this evening, which is an Aboriginal-led project to help us all walk together and co-create a better future as we lead into the state's bicentenary in 2029. But as you will hear tonight, Carol's legacy spans over many, many more years and many organisations that have created significant impact. Her interview will be hosted tonight by Joanna Trilling, as I mentioned, who hosts the ABC Radio Perth's Drive program. And with a strong interest in arts, Joanna previously presented a weekly review segment on the radio in Perth, as well as being a reporter and producer. She has a background in communications and also had a short stint in the political arena. So on behalf of Reconciliation WA, I couldn't be more proud to introduce tonight's memoirs, and I welcome both Jo and Carol to join us on the stage. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end, and we also welcome our online audience who joins us this evening. But for now, please welcome Carol and Jo.
Firstly, I would like to thank Uncle Richard for your welcome, and I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge all the Noongar elders in the room and any elders from different countries who happen to be listening online. Now, we are here to celebrate Carol Innes. I've known Carol for, I was trying to work it out, I think it's 20 years now. 22. She's done the maths better than I can. And I feel so privileged to have learnt from her firsthand because, of course, Carol has shaped the landscape, as has already been mentioned, of reconciliation here, also of the arts, native title, and it's through her many and varied roles in public service, private enterprise, not-for-profits, Aboriginal corporations. It's because of her work that we have these stronger communities and Indigenous leadership here in WA. Carol sat on boards as diverse as North Metro Health, to the Art Gallery of WA just across over there, and in 2022 was awarded a Member of the Order of Australia for her significant services to the Indigenous communities of this state. And however you know Carol, wherever your paths have crossed, I'm sure you'll agree, one of her greatest gifts is her ability to bring people together, and that is evident even just with the people in this room this evening. Carol's been described as a generational change maker, and I've seen her in so many settings over the years, whether it's in boardrooms, facilitating conferences, or just sitting and having cups of tea with elders. And what always strikes me is not only her strength of character, but her willingness to share knowledge, to show emotion. She always turns up. And of course, that infectious laugh, which I think we've heard ringing out this evening already. In fact, Carol received a text recently from a loved family member, and it contained a word I hadn't heard or couldn't remember hearing: meliorism. And it's the belief that we can contribute to positive change and improve the world through acts of love, creativity, compassion and kindness. And it kind of sums Carol up perfectly, doesn't it? It's exactly what she does. So Kaya, Wanju, Kaya Carol.
Hi, Jo.
And we also just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Victoria Laurie, who through many, many weeks of conversation and also decades of friendship has written this year's Reconciliation Memoirs, and I think has so aptly and accurately captured not only Carol's achievements but her spirit, and Vicky's words have of course informed this conversation. So thank you, Vicky Laurie, for that. Carol, how did you feel when you first read what Vicky had written, reflecting on all you have achieved and overcome?
Thank you. First, I just want to acknowledge my brother for your beautiful welcome and for committing your time to be with us this evening, and always standing up for everyone and walking toward a coming together of all of us. I guess the whole process is not just about reading it, but going through this journey because it's a parallel process that we go through, not about the work we do, but also the lives we lead as in our personal space. So when I sat with Vicky a number of times, and I don't know how many times I said to her, I don't know if I can do this. Don't know if I can do this. And then when I got the story, I bawled my eyes out because I hadn't known what people were going to write. I gave Vicky 20 names of beautiful people that have been in my life for decades, and some of those people are in the room here. So it was like a bittersweet process of, I don't know how I did it, because we think about the stuff that Joe talked about with that quote, that I think the kids, my kids and my grandkids know that I feel like I want to change the world. But it was hard because I'm letting me out. Letting me out. People see me in different roles and different things. But when you go through something like this, a memoirs is why are you doing what you're doing for the cause that you stand for. And you can't just cut yourself off. So it was bittersweet, but it was also painful because I know what I was going through in parallel lives. And I think that each time of what we talk about and what we do, we are affected by things that happen in our lives. But I think the strength of those who we know care, those that we know who loved and guided us, I think that was a big part of it, Joe. So I think I've been crying since, inside. But I think what's happened is I just feel blessed of the people that have been in my life.
I think they're blessed. They feel blessed that you're in their lives, Carol. We are gathered here at Boulevard Dip during Reconciliation Week, and we're going to start with reconciliation and then go back to it a bit later, the theme now more than ever. What does reconciliation mean to you, Carol?
Well, in the theme of now more than ever, I think reconciliation is a word with a multitude of meanings. And I think people need to think about what they can do themselves personally, because it's an opportunity for truth, an opportunity for education, an opportunity for understanding, but an opportunity now to act stronger and be more courageous in what we can do, and don't wait for those to lead. I think for me, the reconciliation was about my life. I think about, I started my journey as a walking, knocking on doors in Perth with the reconciliation circle that we did, and the yarns, and I don't know if people were going to open their door and see an Aboriginal person wanting to come and talk about the study circles of reconciliation in those northern suburbs, western suburbs. So that was my first part of the movement, and I wanted it to go beyond the posters. So we had a lot of posters out at that time too, talking about, coming together, all the different tag things that we had with it. But I think deep down is that we also need to acknowledge the past, and colonisation did a big part of that, but it also brought something in our lives for us that we probably didn't want or didn't need. But Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal coming together, some of it was through love, some of it through not, and some of it through abuse. So we stand here in 2024, many of us have connections across many different nationalities. So we aren't all pure in heart and intent. We have a collective ancestral connection across the world. So for me, I've got that with my grandchildren and my children, we have to draw a line in the sand to say we as opposed to they, as opposed to us. We've got to come together as a stronger part of it. So for me, reconciliation has been a light where we all need to move toward, where our kids grow. And if we can sit at a football game and shout for the same team and watch the Matildas take the country by storm and we all feel a part of that, imagine if we did that as part of all of us. So I think that's why I believe that I mean, it was hard for me coming into this space because I know a lot of people didn't want us to be a part of the reconciliation movement. They were saying we didn't do anything as Aboriginal people. This was done to us. But if we don't jump into something to help make a difference and leave it all to others, but I honestly have been a part of where we have been walked over, trod on and disrespected, but I think we have risen with the strength of who we are to say who we are.
Let's return to that a little later, because there has been a lot of First Nations Australians have raised with me post-referendum, post the vote, reconciliation is dead, but we'll leave that for later. You talked about the past, so let's go to your childhood. You were born in Narrogin, grew up in Perenjori in the wheat belt, away from the city. What do you think growing up in the regions gave you?
I think it was a little bit of freedom, until we got into the classroom. Then we knew that we were different in the way we were treated. But I think we had the freedom to run, to be, and we had a big family. I'm one of 9 children, and when we had cousins, another 8. Friends, another lot of family, I think it was 11 or 12 or 13. So we didn't need anyone, we had each other. And we didn't see any of that, any difference. High school was a bit different. That's when I got to see kids coming from Tartan Mission, kids from regional centres and farm kids and town kids. And then it started to be different. It was really hard. And I saw a lot of that at high school. But it's all right when we come to play in the team and sports and those type of things. And our mob, we've got a natural ability with sport. But it was very hard to let that go. I remember that. Honestly, I do. It was hard. But I was good at sport. Probably the grandkids probably don't think it on my kids. But I was pretty good at sport.
But the teachers also recognised something in you quite early on. And they can have a real influence. And they saw something in you.
Yeah, I think in a small country town, you don't have many kids in class. And I went through primary school. There's 7 of us in that year all the way through. 2 boys and 5 girls. So you get a really comprehensive space. And I have a beautiful friend that I still have from kindergarten, that is still in my life. And hope she's listening or can hear my heart beating for her as she battles her fight at the moment. But it was no one else. It was me and 6 other Wadler kids. But I think teachers have a big part of that, because teachers coming to a small town, everyone wants to be a part of the teacher network. Farmers' sons are looking for wives, which I'll never forget one time, and I said to someone who went off to work in Tammin, I can still remember, and I thought, why isn't he laughing? And I said, oh, you need to find yourself a good farmer's wife instead of a daughter. So it was very funny, and I wondered why he wasn't laughing. But I think that's what happened, The farmers were looking for wives, the single men, because it was mostly people with family in those small regional centres. But I think we didn't have sport. Sport was a big part of that. We were a part of the community in sport only. Didn't matter. They didn't want to hear our other space. We but having time with Sharon, who like I said in the book, I acknowledge Sharon. He brought me into home. I don't know how many Wadjali kids take Aboriginal people into their home. That was really big for me when I learnt all about that. So country life is beautiful, but I didn't really know a lot of what happened with Mum
That
and
sort of
Dad's life.
started when you first started
Yes.
coming to Perth, and then you were attending rallies in the early 80s for land rights. What do you
Oh,
recall
look,
of that time?
I think the rally stuff was after going to university, because that's when I found out about what happened to our people. You know, I was 1991, a mature student going back in. Mature at 20-something, please. But
This was when
they
you were
called
at
us mature.
ECU.
Yeah, called us mature age because we didn't go through the system. But that was really hard. And I think when I go back to the learnings of that, I was getting angry, but also too, I didn't realise how much we were protected by Mum and Dad, or especially Mum, around stolen generation, or even talking about that. You know, and raising 9 children and being, you know, a hub of our family, that it hurt a lot, really hurt a lot. And I remember when they were giving us opportunity to access those records, and you could only get them if the family approved and Mum and Dad approved, and I got them, their records, and I never saw them again. I think Mum used them in the fire, to light the fire. Dad, I don't know if he ever saw them again. So that was a quiet time, not to raise it again, and I got them many years later. Because what it hurt me is that they couldn't even speak about what was in those documents. So I became angry. Like, I think some people in this room have seen me angry, and then Mum and Dad basically said, you need to calm yourself down, don't get on those rallies, don't do this because I'll throw you in prison, all of those sorts of things.
But you were searching and looking and learning.
Yes, and then I fell in love. We all fall in love. And then I went and had kids, and I was young, and I think about now, I mean, we want to oppose our families and think that we all know what's best at 17, 18. And I feel that now too, we still get it with some of our kids, but I didn't realise the extent of why I should have listened deeper. I tell people now, deep listening, deep listening.
If only the young Sarah had done
deep listening. Because what I realise now is I married a farmer's son, and it was very hard working through that process. And we call it unconscious bias when people don't realise the effect and what their actions are on other people. And I suffered it. All the bruises. I felt it all. And that's why this has been a very hard process, because that was happening in my life. And I'm lucky to be here still, and I can tell the story. But when I got to university, and that whole process of understanding, how could this happen to us? How could Mum and Dad have lived through all of that? And then I went back to work in my high school. Gosh, I had teachers who taught me, goodness me, they didn't like it because I was pulling them up. And you know, in the memoirs, there's a beautiful friend who was one of the deputy principals at the time. But our kids were going through school without learning to read and write, and I wasn't a teacher. I was smart, but I worked with our Aboriginal kids through, and there were a lot of Aboriginal kids in our school. But it was hard when you're working with teachers who you thought, oh my God, you weren't really good for me when I was here either. But, you know, working with all the school and the teachers that helped me educate a couple of young boys to read through their process of year 9, they got to year 9 without reading, was a big step in that change. And, I didn't have a qualm about going to talk to the teachers of all different ages. I said, I need stuff to help fast track these kids by the time they leave this year, that I want them to be able to read or write a sentence, and they did. They didn't want to be a part of the class system, they just wanted to be with me, but we worked very hard and we achieved what we set out to do. So that was a special time for me, but also as a mum too. I was a new mum with a son and a daughter. So it was a big learning curve for me that I kept seeing we need to do something different, and I need to do, and I will. And I think that's what we have to do, is what we see we can't ignore, and what we can do we should. And I think that's been what I've been able to do.
Yeah, those studies at ECU also awakened something in you and perhaps gave you a different language with which to start negotiating different things.
Yes, I think, but also we had the people, like, Simon Forrest was at the university at ECU, and, Dave Palmer was there, I remember that. So we were, like, again, Aboriginal women, most of us were, coming in to make a difference in our lives, but also to work in the system, but to take on, the change. But I think then I got too big for my boots, apparently, and ended up in a divorce and separation, and I had to live me. And that was very different and difficult time. And
it's walking in two worlds, which we've talked about many times.
It's like, and shades of grey.
Yeah.
It's so hard because, and Coral, I'm glad you're here tonight, darling. I think in our journeys we make in reconciliation and stepping out and doing things, you need to know you've got a net. And I think, and I had a net, and I had people who could catch me and hold me, and I think that was, we can do all these things, but I even think the stuntmen have the net to catch people as well, because we can all crash and be hurt. I started uni again at Curtin Uni, and that was big, and I went through and finished my degree in pain, and then the shock of going through that process, and I lost Mum. That was really hard because, when Mum came to Perth and went on to achieve her dream of being able to do something different than just being a mother and a wife, being one of the first Aboriginal health workers at Derbyl, which at the time it was PAMS, Perth Aboriginal Medical Service. I think our mothers hold us in a way that they don't realise, because what Mum did for all of us was basically say that we've got to get out and make a life for ourselves. And the strength of her in what she did for herself, but also for us, and I think her determination and strength too in what she went on to achieve for herself. And so I think...
and you learnt more about her family, your family, through the work that you were doing in the wheat belt. How was that, discovering more about?
Well, it was, I think being in Midland, I worked in the Midland office of Department of Social Security, at the name at the time, but now it's Centrelink. We had 17 Aboriginal staff, which was phenomenal. And I was always able to get in a car and get out back in the country. And that was the best part of it. So in the country, you go and meet people. And I remember someone saying the other day, our mob would say, Uncle Aubrey Lynch said, our mob would always say, who's your mob, where you're from? That whole thing, and getting to know people. And then I met a lot of Mum's family, and through that, because Mum that was Mum's region where a lot of her family were from. So that was a beautiful process because we were in a region where we couldn't go and access, and we would go and see the aunties and the family, but we didn't meet a lot of other mob, which we've got a big family. And introducing Mum to some people, or connecting her, because being a stolen generation child in Roland's mission, all of her family, one was married and one was in Magumba. It was we only ever met the kids from the mission, Mum's friends and family from that, as opposed to our blood relations. So we went through most of our lives with our Mum's family from the mission, and some of them, were our family. We found out through later, but through the work that I did and connecting up. And I remember when Mum was wanting to get a healthcare card, and I don't know if you know about healthcare cards, but she wanted a healthcare card for medication, and I said, "Oh, you've got to go through all of this," and I said, "But I can't do all this because we couldn't work for our families." I said, "You can do that." And Mum goes through the process, and they said, "Oh, by the way, do you know that you're probably eligible for an age pension?" And Mum goes, "My daughter works for you. She could have told me that." And it was very funny. So it changed Mum's life, and she went on to do what she did. But I'll never forget that when she said, "You could have told me that. I'm trying to get medical. You could have I could have got it all." But that was a big part of it, because we were regimented by rules and stuff. We had to interpret policy and change. I mean, if you think about income support for many people, the legislation and the stuff, there's like volumes and volumes of policy around how we have to do that. So I give it to all our Aboriginal people who have to keep interpreting the rules and regulation and policies about how things are done and dealt with by us. So that was a long time there, and I worked through a process of meeting people, introducing Mum and connecting, and it was beautiful. I was very honoured to meet many elders through that time that took me on a journey to where I am today.
Let's talk about the arts, Carol, because you have had such an impact on them, but I think they've also offered you a lot. You say they've been your trampoline to jump off, to see above all the deficits in Aboriginal social policy. The arts give you hope and inspiration. Where did that journey begin? Was it when Wendy Wise employed you at the Department for the Arts, or was it earlier?
Yeah, I think the opportunity, because one of the things that we have is a big part of working in the public sector is opportunity to take vacancies across different agencies. And I was in the Commonwealth Agency, and the State Agency contacted to see if anyone was interested, and I put my hand up. It was 1995, and when I think about it, I feel it. I felt like I jumped on the high diving board, and something took me somewhere else. I felt like I was in a place that we didn't have to care about if we didn't have any money. But I learnt from people telling their stories through the art, and seeing our people and hearing stories that got an education across not just Western Australia but the whole country. So when I talk about the arts is us. And it's very funny that everyone's reconciliation journey seems to think about they have to get an artist to design their cover, and that's a great reconciliation step, and I think, oh my God, you've got to be kidding. But I met Richard, all those years ago, and it was amazing education, walking behind and learning from those who led the process. And we talk about stuff when we go, we were there. We talk about different, that's where we were, and we're like, but we don't actually big note our space. But we have been a part of some pivotal shifts across the country that have led to some amazing things through the arts. And so I am really grateful for that opportunity. I remember when Auntie Doris Pilkington, I had to launch her book in Queensland at the Playwrights Conference because the chair of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Arts Board, Richard Wally, wasn't available. So they asked me, because I was coming from WA and Auntie was from WA, and it was massive, and I'm like, I've only just come into this space a year. And then I had to do, Mum had passed in 1995, so this was 1996, and when I did the research, Auntie was in the mission with Mum. They were friends in Roland's mission, and I'll never forget that place, because what I saw from the people who were in this space, we had, to say, is it Jimmy Lewis? I had everything in front of me, but when I started to talk, I couldn't. You all know what I did. I bawled my eyes out because it was the energy of what was happening. I didn't realise that when Auntie Doris was writing about her mum and her aunties, that they were kids in an institution, and so I worked with her on the book as the arts officer, and then to launch her book, and then also to see her movie at Fox Studios in Sydney with the red carpet laid out for Bow Mob. That was pretty special. And I think about that, and when I think about people like, Nerelda Jacobs, now she's in Sydney and, catapulting Noongar into that space, where before it was just Richard Wally trying to shake the foundations of, getting recognition for our mob and our contribution and who we can be. But I remember that as very pivotal because, people think about, I remember people used to say the so-called stolen generation at one time, and that just puts a light on our people that we are telling a lie about what happened to our lives. So I think the arts, where our stories could be told through music, through poetry, through theatre, which Richard did a lot of that with many others, with Ernie and many people, the musicians that I got to meet and be a part of, developing that. So it was healing. It was a huge, and the arts is a huge healing process for us. And we sang it, we performed it, and we still are doing that in many parts now, on many platforms across the world now.
Well, your impact can be felt right across the state. I mean, your influence seen in everything from Yuri Arkin, Barking Gecko, Mugabala Books, and many credit you for lifting the profile of Aboriginal artists. And there's something that the arts can do that even sport can't.
Yeah, sports needs us for our designs. That's what I use in the arts now, their designs. And Jade Dolman's in the room tonight, who did the Hawthorn Guernsey. But I think what it shows for us is that we have a way of telling our story, and if you understand that and come on a journey with us, it can help you understand stronger. So people's contribution to all part of what we can do together has been huge. And I think about some of the people, because when, it was a really hard process with Vicky too. It wasn't easy. I've known that woman for a long time, but I tell you what, she was a taskmaster, and I'm like, do I have to do any more? But when I think about this process of these memoirs, this doesn't just happen about my space. It was the people that were in the net and holding the net. If you think about that, and what we do, if you haven't got good people around you who catch you when you want to fall, you've got to rethink what you want in life. But I really want to acknowledge many of those people, because I had a huge opportunity to see Australia through the arts, and I think I saw the places that the paintings were about. I had privilege to sit on the ground with the elders in the Kimberley, with this beautiful brother here who's now our co-chair. But many other things don't give that. I mean, we can keep fighting for social justice, but if social justice weaves its way through to telling a story through the arts, how much stronger things would be. And I think sometimes too is we need to collaborate a lot better across many things. I think that's what I've learned in what I've been a part of now, because now in the work that I'm doing, it's not on a canvas, it's not a mural on a wall, it's the building. And I really want to thank the brothers in the room here that I've been working with for a long time around how we can engage a lot stronger in building and design here in Perth.
Let's talk a little bit about your time at Perth Festival, because you've been involved with that organisation for so many, many years. You were a program manager, a facilitator, member of the festival's Noongar Advisory Circle. But it was through your and Barry's work on Nalak Budja that I think my eyes were really opened. Now that resulted, I'm sure many of you have seen that work. There's a replica of it in this very museum, a massive canvas, one of the country's biggest Indigenous paintings, 8 metres high, 10 wide. And I would like you to talk a little bit about the journey to that painting, because it sort of brought all the elements of what you have given to so many together.
I think in process and change, before we can make things work, there needs to be a lot of trust. And I think that's the importance of why reconciliation is really important. You can't just think you can have a reconciliation action plan or and make that something that you want to hang your hat on.
And it takes time.
It does. And I'd already had a huge relationship with Wendy Wise, who was the general manager at the time. So I think relationships, we talk about this respect and relationships of what we all do for the opportunity that we want to see through reconciliation. I think the beautiful part was, so we had given, Barry and I, through the work that we were doing, we had a responsibility to bring the regions into the festival, so we didn't mind that because we loved being out in the country. And we were meeting and talking with the elders if they wanted
you brought Noongar elders together in an unprecedented way through that process. It was hugely significant.
Yes, and a lot of trust. See, that's the thing, is that we had to...
a lot of cups of tea.
A lot of cups of tea, a lot of tears, and but a lot of kilometres. And I think sometimes, and I'll use all parts of the different analogies because it affects policy, it affects projects, and it affects the way that we can do things better. But one of the things I think for me was the focus on Noongar in the program for the 2006 festival. We were working on that for nearly 3 or 4 years before it even hit the process. So the effect comes later. You've got to put the investment in to make the change you want to see. And
do you think there's still a huge lack of understanding about that? Because so often you see people walk into communities, walk into rooms and expect to influence change or ask questions, and they have no idea. We were talking the other day, people just nod.
People nod because they think, and you want this done now, and you want all of this, but and it becomes it's always around the cost and how much, or is that too much? It was always around the cost of something. But I think the investment through all of this was the bringing people together. We brought 125 elders from across Noongar country, metropolitan and regional WA, only in Noongar country. A lot of work, and Rich too was a part of that process, and steering of that with Barry at the meetings. And some of the funny things that I think about, many of those people are gone. I did a count up the other day, and I think we've got 11 left out of the 22 that were involved, still with us. A lot of the elders have, contributed, but they're looking at us now from a different place. But I think what they gave to us and what they were a part of, because I remember when we unveiled it at Claremont.
Then Governor Ken Michaels spoke Noongar for the first time.
Well, see, lots of people didn't know that either. So when Ken Michaels started talking Noongar, all the Noongars thinking, who's this man talking and where did he learn to do that? So, that investment in what we do was very big, and, Richard has been a big part of those big conversations and working with Barry and the team and the elders in that. And I remember when it was unveiled in Kings Park and Drew was like, oh my God, the stage is going to collapse. There's nearly 5,000 Noongars on the stage. It was big, And
if you were there, it was just the most remarkable moment.
It was spectacular. We felt it. We were seeing it every day, and tribute to Shane Pickett, rest in peace, and Lance Chad and Alice Worrell, rest in peace, and Yvonne Kickett, Sharon Egan and Troy Bennell. What they created, we created something we weren't even thinking about. So, 6 people, 6 artists, 3 men, 3 women, emerging artists, established artists, and, it was a very beautiful process and a very beautiful outcome that tells a story of us as Noongars. Survival in this place. But I think for me, what it showed me is that give us the investment in what we want to do, which comes around money, let us be a part of it. Because I remember Healthway, we had to be, it was so funny, I kept saying to him, hide the salt, because a lot of our meetings were filmed, so for record, and Healthy Heart and everything else, and we had sacks of salt sitting on the table, and I'm thinking, hide the salt, and then they reckon, what for now? And I said, oh, it's all right, I'm trying to, I didn't want it to be all on video, because, we got this money from Healthway as well, so a lot of those funny little things that happened along the way, but we took the artists across country too when the artists were selected, and what we didn't realise ourselves is many of those artists didn't even travel across country either. They stayed in their own places. So we all thought we were taking Noongars on a ride. Nothing. We were taking Noongars who were scared, leaving their own place to go to another part of Noongar country. And that's when this whole thing around spirituality and connection and our country is still alive. We learnt all of this again, and we had to respect a lot of that. And I remember being in Albany, and we were going to see one of the elders, and he was so proud of what he created, because he created some amazing art. And they were he carved a lot of the wood and sticks and doic, boomerangs, everything. He had it all laid out in his house. And then when he saw who came into his house, Shane Pickett and Lance Chad, he forgot about them. What he was showing them, he just burst into tears, because he just said, oh my God, I got the kings of Noongar art here in my house. So everyone was all a mess. I don't know where I went, but I know I had to get out of there fast. But he was, and I guess that's what we do. I mean, our mob don't have a lot, and I think we have got some millionaires out there in Noongar country now. But it was, that becomes treasure, that becomes treasure. And I think that what that showed me was, he was proud that he was making a continuation of creating stuff, but when he recognised those 2 men that came into the house, we knew we were going somewhere, and I just wished others saw, but those were the moments for me that lifted my heart. It's the strength of Noongar people. And I listened to Betsy the other day, and Betsy Buchanan's story around the generosity of spirit of our Noongar people was powerful, because Betsy helped my mum, and I said that to her, and I just wanted to say thank you to her. But the Aboriginal people, we have fought through adversity here in this state, across all states, but we've had some amazing non-Aboriginal people who have walked with us or helped unlock, and I think Robert French talked about that at the breakfast as well. in the establishment of the ALS. So there's a lot of things that happened in history where, you know, we've got to think about that. And that's why reconciliation's always been a part of how we can do things together. And I think for me, it's family, you know. We all got to think about, we all breathe the same air, we all walk the same earth. And I think that we all now just still do a little bit more, not just about what we can create or what we're a part of change with, but as an individual we need to think really deeply about what did last year mean to Aboriginal people? What did that mean? Because I know it hurt me.
It really hurt you. I mean, you sent a text to a number of people about the toll it had taken personally in the lead up to that vote. You sent a message a few days from the vote saying that you felt angry, hurt, you were exhausted. You said, my body is weak, my voice is weak, my head hurts at the hypocrisy we're going through, the blatant racist attacks on all our people who've shown leadership and courage to stand up and hope for a better future with this option. I was really worried about you. I know a lot of other people were. How are you now, 7 months on?
I think people forgot, or they got a little bit mixed up about that message, because that message was basically saying the world's going to keep going ahead for me. And I didn't want, and most of these people who got this message, I think there was about 50 or 100 beautiful friends in my life, that I don't want you to think about, well, how is Carol feeling after the vote? Because I didn't want it to be an awkward place that we come together again and they would ask me, how am I feeling? I'm telling you, this is me now. I was sick, I was quite sick, I had bronchitis pretty bad. But for me, the hypocrisy was the bipartisan stuff.
Do you think it should have just been delayed the minute that there was...
You should have stopped it as soon as that, because I think the bipartisan approach should have been about the whole process. And I was angry, really angry. And we had people doing the old style door knocking when we should have we should have went to the social media, like what they used against us with that. So I think that whole process around, don't look to politicians for the answers. And I know we've got some beautiful politicians. But I think we need to groundswell a movement of change. And I think, we talked about the 6 million. It's fantastic, because we're not going to be part of a third of 3% of the nation. There's a little bit more now. We need to really be mindful, and I think Richard talks about it as well, around humanitarianism. And I think we need to think about how lucky we bloody well are that we are here in this place when you consider what's happening in other parts of the world. So for me, that was hard, because we had that on the 7th of October. 7 days later we go into what happened on the vote. And I think we all, but it's still having effect on people.
Well, even recently, Premier Roger Cook ruled out pursuing a state-based voice, and he was quoted as saying, I think the nature of our society nowadays is such that we won't see these big grand social projects or social gestures, and reconciliation will happen on a smaller scale at a community level. Yeah. How do you respond to that?
I'm glad he was at the breakfast and he saw the audience, which was fantastic. And I think a lot of people who were at the breakfast who will go on and mobilise in many different ways. The 11,500 whatever plus people that were a part of the online process and turned up at the regional events, that we will galvanise that intent to make our country together. It cannot just be the majority anymore, and there needs to be a very powerful shake-up, wake-up around how our people are being treated in 2024. I think that's what we've got to think about.
I mean, we can talk about truth-telling and listening, but a member of Cabinet, a senior West Australian politician, recently said at a function, we can't be prisoners of the past.
Yeah, that was very disappointing for me, because I'm thinking, we've got Anzac Day coming up. You know, what are we doing on Anzac Day? I did drop my head. I was angry about that, and I had to get up behind that and speak. And that, for me, is thinking, how can you say that to an 80-year-old person who was taken from her mother? You cannot be a prisoner of the past. How can you say that to a daughter whose mother was taken into that space? So all of that really reflects, so people don't understand that. Words can cut deep, and I think actions need a lot more than just whimsical words. So I think for me, it became a part of, if you talk about truth-telling, what are the scaffolding you're putting around our community for this? What investment are you making into this? And I think, you know, with the federal government injection into education, I hope truth-telling is going to be a part of that, because we don't have the people and the resource to keep standing up and not having others feel that they can walk into the space to be educators of that.
Where should the resources be put? I mean, there's a lot of talk about place name changes. Professor Marcia Langston recently said the perpetrators of injustice should be named, their roles in historical events fully recounted. Merely deleting their names from buildings, rooms, courtyards, roads, and not explaining why compounds injustice with acts of denial. And I was reading about a veterinarian, a vet called Daniel Murnane. He was a volunteer in the police patrol, and he was found to have killed 4 Aboriginal men, 3 Aboriginal women near the Port of Wyndham back in 1926. Then he lied about it, according to a Royal Commission held soon after. And the University of Melbourne has a Daniel Murnane Veterinary School, or it had. It was only renamed in March. And that university is working to publish unprecedented research about its relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But we don't see enough of this.
If you think about the statues, I think there was one in Fremantle, you know, the uproar around changing that. The uproar around when we said, I remember it was through the arts around the Pinjarra massacre. Do you remember that, Richard? Oh my goodness. I thought they were going to come and get on those horses again and come after us. But they wanted to call it the Battle of Pinjarra. How could you have a Battle of Pinjarra coming with horses and guns up against a mob with the weapons? So they left from the old mill. So all of that stuff for me was, you know, we can't talk the truth-telling. It's sort of like going through an inquiry of bringing them home. I know many people were hurt through the bringing them home. And that's a sign that the old people are listening. Because honestly, through all of this, it opened up the pain for people again, sharing their story. There was nothing behind that. But at the moment, we've got some amazing professionals, Aboriginal professionals and others who could collaborate to look at, because this stuff is emotional pain, this stuff is, people endured physical pain through a lot of this, and people bore the scars. I mean, you know, there's children of some of our people who they never got to see and, you know, never got to meet, or I think a big part of truth-telling is You can't put a football team together, we'll do the football analogy, without the physios, the nutritionists, the dietitians, all of those people and all of those, to have something run smoothly. And then you have review, then you have the football, all of it. It all is all there. We need that. And how much do those football stadiums cost? $1 billion. How much do those, big events cost? Billions of dollars. So we need lots of money invested into a structure and a system that's going to affect change. We can't keep doing minimalist stuff for our people.
Let's leave that for a moment.
Yes.
And because we haven't even got to your native title work, Southwest Aboriginal Land and Sea Council, Carol. There is so much that you have done. Your years working in the arts were followed by that successful application to join the Southwest Aboriginal Land and Sea Council. Why was it important for you to do that work? Why did you want to do that work?
I think when you go from seeing how people were telling their stories and celebrating their stories, and everyone wanted our stories on their walls, in their, they wanted to come to a concert or whatever. But I think there was a gap around the recognition of Noongar. I think that was, for me, was the hardest part, because so much over that time, we were being told the Noongars have got nothing, poor Noongars this, poor Noongars that. And our Noongar people were the warriors for change. Our elders that stood up for education rights and housing rights, that formed, stuff that had impact across the country. It wasn't, just what was happening on the East Coast. A lot of our elders had a strong impact for change. I don't know how many people know, 1927 on the 9th of March, where we had the delegation of our elders, grandfathers of ours, stand up to say, what about us, for our rights? This was 1927. It's on the plaque outside the building at the old Treasury building. That, how many people go there now, do they know that story? That's what we have. We had a fight on our hands for treat us with respect. We are asking the same question. Recognise us for what we belong. We're still asking that question. Build relationships with us, reconciliation again, and then the opportunities that we can do. Our people were having opportunities at that time, building fences, keeping themselves out, not about looking after the sheep and the other things that came later, clearing the land. So I think the native title stuff for me was about fighting for our rights, and I think that was a big part of that. Is although I think for me, and you talk about it, Joe, and what you talk about is about bringing people together. My role was to keep people engaged in what we were trying to do.
It was such a beautiful continuation of that work you'd done on a project like Nulak Kutbudra. I mean, Glenn Kelly says it's hard to overstate your role in that process. And I mean, the extent of consultation was it was ginormous.
It was huge. We came off a high from the festival, Noongar recognition in that space, in a platform that took us across the world, which was, I thought that's what we talk about, on the biggest platform that the arts can give us, the oldest festival, they gave us that. So we were stepping up with Noongar, and then, it took us a long time to go through the process of the Noongar recognition and the act. But a lot of pain too, our people were going through. And then people didn't really want native title either, but because of the way the native title law was, it really left us with nothing else. And so a big part of the work that I did was to keep our spirits burning through what we could do, around.
And your strategy of pairing prospective leaders with elders has been recognised. Again, bringing people together.
a lot of the work that I did was working across local government, natural resource management groups, caring for country, leadership development. But like I was saying earlier around trust, a big part of what we went through was whimsical decision makers who thought that they could hold us over a barrel. I mean, I know Nolan's been a big part of native title, the fight for recognition. But I think when we negotiated the Act and recognition in the settlement claim was huge. I worked with the elders on the development of that, and that's what, when Glenn and I talk about that, that was huge. The elders who came together as part of that in the early 90s so that we get this recognition across this city and across the southwest, I want to thank them with all my heart. I think a big part of what a lot of people don't realise is that the essence of country and where we belong, it's still connected to us, and we are still connected. So no matter what people can do, we will know who we are. Some of the elders are still trying to find family, and many of them passed without connecting. And the beautiful part of my journey through native title was that, and I'm grateful for that, because we were able to do a lot. Native title wasn't the answer for everything. I would have loved to have the land rights. But I went to something very beautiful last night to listen to someone that I've admired forever, Jane Goodall, who talked about how we need to care for our world. And our old people did that. We're only a young country, but this is ancient land, this is our land. Our people walk this. People think that a lot of the problems were our problems, they're not. We're 95 years in of destruction and pain of country. And when I heard her talk through her determination that she wanted to protect animals and the movement across hundreds of countries to do that, I want that for us. I want that for every single one of you in this room. Connect and online. Connect your head and your heart to make a difference so that we as humans on this land, in this time, give better opportunities for our kids.
Reconciliation it's designed to be a two-way street. You can't reconcile if you're not prepared to do your part. What should the part of non-Indigenous Australians look like?
I think it's about the acceptance of the history. It's that people need to accept the history and understand it. We can't talk truth-telling if you're not going to accept it. So there has to be a huge acceptance in this, and I'm tired of saying, we didn't get taught that in school. We didn't know that. You now know it. We've been saying it for years. It's been there on many billboards. It's all a part of that process. I think what we haven't had is courageous leadership and collective courageous leadership, collaborative space, and not just keep picking Aboriginal people off who are going to tell you what you want, as opposed to a collective of people that are proud, connected, and a big part of, we contribute to every part of the state through culture, through economic, through environment, and through the social. We're not just social problems. We're not social problems.
Touching on that, the economics, you joined the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority, and again, you were doing what you always do, bringing people on a journey together. You worked on projects at Yagan Square, Elizabeth Key, strange name, very closely with Richard Wally, and you use the Kaartkut Wangani framework.
I don't think they know what hit them when they got Carol and Richard together. It was, and Annalise, it's great to see you here and have you in this space. I had to get out of native title because it was killing me. It was hurt, so much hurt. It was hurting. And an opportunity. And I think this whole thing too is about we've got to find a place that we can help fill our heart with something that is meaningful to us. And I did a huge unlearn. You know, when you're the only Aboriginal person going into an all non-Aboriginal environment. How many of you have done that? Come on, put your hands up. Anyone gone into that? How many of you gone into an all Aboriginal environment? That's what we had to have. And the majority of our people were 34 average age. So I had to go and learn from 34-year-olds how to be a part of this. And honestly, it was my best learning ever for me, because in the whole leadership journey with this, and it's people like, you know, we talk about, and I talk about a lot, is courageous leadership. It's people don't think about the positional space, but look at the impact that they could do by doing something different, which Wendy did at the top at the festival. And that was beautiful that people like her and others allow us to deliver something, and then having Richard working with me that side, me in the system, it was big, and that whole investment was big, because we were giving an opportunity for our people to demonstrate that we can, given the opportunity. So it's sort of like whilst we don't have mining like it's across the regions, in the city, development was the opportunity. That's how I saw that for me, is that so much of our land was being cleared by development. And it was huge, so much was going on. I think we gave us, and while Yagan Square is still there now, being repurposed for something else, that land is still our land. That country is still our country, and it still leads through it. The university that's going to be coming up next door to it, they'll be accessing that as well. But I think about the elders that contributed to and were a part of the decision to the design, what it looks like, and that was beautiful. You know, we took people on an education journey through what they could develop. And I remember sitting inside of the MRA and watching the market of what that would look like. And then when we went and sat in it, it was unbelievable to be a part of creating change with our people. We did it with our people. And the Richard's work through the Kaartkut Wangani, I suppose, is our head, our heart, and our talking, our language through this is, if you've ever worked with Richard Wally, he is a huge strategist, but he brings the depth and breadth of our old people into a room that can transcend a group to another level, and just agree with Richard. But I think when we went through that, we had to convert that process into government speak, and that was big, but we had to have willingness to the listening, and I think that's the big part of what I tried to come through. So the memoirs that for me have been about, whilst it's been a part of my journey in life, I have respected my elders. I have built powerful relationships with people that I could still have around me today. I have taken opportunities and built opportunities for our people to prosper from. And I think that's what we want to see, and that's what reconciliation means to me, is don't just have a bullshit process. We can't.
You need the resource and the net.
And you need it all. And I think that's what our people want. And I think we've got big social issues not us. Our whole society has them. Don't just pinpoint ours.
Another more recent, very strong partnership was with your co-chair of Reconciliation WA, Gary Smith. And you did a lot of work with corporates, often in boardrooms or with CEOs considering their approach to reconciliation action plans, RAPs, and you would give your head and heart talk. You were a good combo?
I think Gary panicked a bit. Because Gary always had a script. Gary always had notes. It wasn't his notes, it was his iPad.
Good luck with that, Gary. Have you not seen me throwing bits of paper left, right and centre?
Yeah, or the iPad. Gary was the iPad king, and I'm looking at him with his iPad and making notes, and I'm thinking, oh, what's he got there? But I think, and being a part of corporate Australia too, you know, where Gary came from as the chair of KPMG in Western Australia, and we just probably when we started at Rec WA, we both felt in a couple of months in what the hell are we doing? This organisation has grown phenomenally in this state. You know, Robert French was asking me, so what did you think about what's happened? I said, we have done a lot. A lot has shifted and a lot has changed. We never had this all those years ago in this room. This is what we have worked hard for as a community, to make people accountable for what they can contribute to. So with Gary, it was big. So we were shaking the foundations of corporate Perth, weren't we, Gary? And Gary was very gentle and left it to me, because I think sometimes we balanced off. We played that. So you two need to think about that. This who's going to be good, bad, or ugly in some things. But I think the biggest part for me, Gary, was one time we were sitting at having lunch somewhere, and Gary, I think you were probably the only Wodgler amongst all the blackfellas, and he saw some of his mates, the jacket and tie. They thought, what's Smithy doing over there with all them? And wonder what was going on. I think we just came out of a walk. Wasn't it a walk we just done? And I loved it when Gary got up and just told them straight out, you know. Didn't you gave them a pin or something? I think you gave them something. And, you know, it was a moment where I think we can't do this on our own, you know, as we have to work across community. And I think what corporate Perth showed me in the relationships that we work through, our organisation wouldn't be here if we didn't have corporate Perth with us. And we had no money. Story of our lives with non-for-profit organisations, but especially when you want to do stuff with blackfellas. So we had no money, and we had 2.5, 3 weeks to get money. And we had a network of Gary Smith colleagues as well.
Resources and a net.
Resources and money. Some of these people are in this room or online, but, you know, I acknowledge all of them. You know, we had Wesfarmers, we had BHP, we had Rio, we had them all lined up in Woodside. But that's why it's important. Whilst we all can talk about the mining sector, people need jobs. We're working in that space. Our mob are in those organisations, but I think it's the humanity that comes with it, and also the responsibility of what they give back in. But what we had is that they got us out of they backed us for a year. We had everyone investing into us to make that happen, and I think that's what I felt we didn't really have before. And I think, you know, working alongside Gary, we were shaking the foundations of Perth. I think people were panicking.
A formidable team.
We did a lot of that, and I think that was that appreciation that we can't keep knocking corporate or things that we probably can't touch. Is we need to recognise the means in which they can help provide a difference.
And as you mentioned, you can't do it alone. In this post-referendum environment, how can reconciliation allies, non-Aboriginal people, continue to take action to support reconciliation?
I think they just got to show up. show up in many ways. Show up in a personal space at home, educate yourselves, be a part of activities that can happen and change. Think about where your workplace sits. Think of all the different things that you can just bump a little bit more. There's so many things that can happen, Jo, but I think we've got to start thinking, what can I do first? What can we do together? What can I do in this space? We've got to do something very differently because we don't have the leadership. We don't have the leadership, and people who want to blame Albanese or blame Cook or blame this or blame that, we can't blame no one if we're not doing nothing ourselves.
We all need to work together.
We need to work together. We need to collaborate. But I think last night what I got from Jane Goodall was that when our heart and our head connect for something, for the difference we want to make, to save a place we care so much about, that's what we need to do. And I think how many people love listening to the rain? You know, it was beautiful. How many been praying for that rain? Well, that's what I want to pray for. I want to pray for recognition that can help grow, and we can have an amazing community.
United, equitable and reconciled. Carol, we'll almost finish talking and then there'll be time set aside for questions. So have a think about questions that you might want to ask Carol. But most recently, of course, along with Uncle Richard, Professor Colleen Haywood and Dr. Noel Nannup, you established Danjoo Koorliny, Walking Together, which is what you have always done. Where to next? I mean, you've got a little bit more time in certain senses, one could say, now that you are not the co-chair of Reconciliation WA. Where will this energy be put? What's next for you, Carol?
Me. It'll be put into me. I think the biggest part of what I'm doing now, I'm working for myself. A big part of, I never set out in a space to be a business owner, and I am. And I've been in business for over, since the ABN came into play. And I've been doing it quietly. And now it's been elevating more. Now I'm in a partnership business as well. And maybe we'll do other things. But I think for me, I don't know if I want to work to 70. I realise that. I also recognise too that I have been quite overwhelmed by being a selected process, and I acknowledge the Reconciliation Board for that, to be a part of these memoirs for 2024. But I think for me is it's time for me to give to me and my family, who have watched me leave the front door, come back late, or come back 2 days later, or whatever. But I think it's time for family and for me to be a part of it, because I will stay in my interest zone. Like, I don't want to be in part of fixing. I want to be a part of celebrating. I want to be a part of enjoying life for me, and that I can be a part of and control, because in everything else, it gets too hard. So that's my space. Danjoo Koorliny for me has been all of what I've been working with, and with people I love, so that's been very special. But I tell you what, it has been something that it's a rolling stone, and it's getting bigger and moving, and the change is, this year has been. I hope people get to understand what Danjoo Koorliny is. It's not about what we're doing, it's what you're doing with us and what we're doing together. And I think that's what we want people to see. Jump in, because this is an opportunity for all of us. Be a part of it, because we're all part of this together. So let's look at the environment around us, let's look at how we save it together, but also to recognise the two knowledge systems that our people can contribute to. Talking through around our spiritual connection to this place. We're all connected. Every one of us are connected. Every one of you in this room are a connection to making a difference. But when we think about the land without all of us. If you think about what changed through COVID, you know, that COVID was not so long ago, but how far we've become greedier since COVID in what we're trying to do. We've got to keep caring for people and caring for those who need that support. So for me, I'm going to be a little bit more selfish for myself.
And your family.
And the family, but also I think sometimes lived experience, our knowledge, our recognition, and our contribution is totally devalued in our space. I will keep pushing up, elevating that, but I want to celebrate what we have done, because we don't look down the mountain to see how far we've come.
You have done so much, Carol. Thank you. Love you.
Oh, God.
Here we go.
Yeah.
We've got some roving mics. So there are roving microphones. And then, Jodie, are you getting
I've got
questions online? Has anybody got a question? Do you want to put your hand up and then the microphones will hopefully find you? Surely you've got questions.
Whilst we're waiting for some questions, I will throw to a couple online if that's okay, because they're here. But can I just take a moment to thank for both Jo and Carol for such a wonderful insight. And I feel like we've sat in a lounge room chair with you this evening, Carol, and had a cup of tea and a yarn. So thank you for your openness, your honesty and your beauty as always. Please join me in thanking Carol. If I can open with one question, Carol, Danjoo Koorliny and the movement post-2029 is about systemic change. So for the next 200 years, we feel and see a very different Western Australia. What would be the one thing that you would like to see post-2029 in Western Australia for us to rise to that challenge?
I think for me, 2029 should be about respecting country, respecting people, and but also too, I don't want us to be an add-on. I want us to be in it. I want it to be a togetherness that we've never seen before. I want our everyone to understand the colours of our flag. Everyone to know the Recognition Act in Noongar country. That's what I want to see. I want people across the regional centres where water is such a scarcity at the moment, quality, want housing, for goodness sake, adequate housing for our people. We can't keep having 14,000 people on a wait list. So all of this stuff becomes a part of what we have to change in a system to make a difference. I want less of our people in prison. I mean, they're not high numbers compared to the world, but they are high numbers for our people. And kids in care, kids in custody has been a big part of that. Now we've got, family domestic violence is a big part of that. It's been here since 1829, family domestic violence. Our people have suffered that at the hands of colonisers. So what I want to see is people understand that we have suffered generational trauma. People understand what generational trauma means, and I want that every single one of you in this room and online to start becoming a part of that educating process.
Thank you, Carol. Is there any in the room? It's very difficult with bright lights panning out. I do have some, yes, up the back, and we'll have a microphone coming to you shortly. Jade?
I'm trying not to cry. So sorry, Auntie Carol. But knowing what you know now, what advice would you give me going forward on this journey?
Is that you, Jade?
It sure is. It's Jade. Sorry. So knowing what you know now, what would you give? What would your advice be to people like me and our brothers and sisters that will keep this work going forward?
Yeah, you're never too young. you're never too young to make a difference, and you're never too young to be a part of the change. I was very blessed. I was very young, working with my elders at 24. You need to get out there and you need to make a difference and follow your dream of our fight for the passion that's in you. But don't ever think you have to do it on your own, because, like I said, you've got to keep your net. For me, is that you need to, I know who I had in my camp. I know who I had in my camp. And we would be able to care for each other. We are survivors. So even this process of this book, I knew who I could go to, but I didn't know what they were going to say, but I could have gone to another 20 or 30 more. You need to know, but the thing for me is you need to build strong relationships. You need to be a part of, make your own community for yourself, so that you've got someone that you can do different things with. And I think that was a really passionate part of me. I had 30 years of working with elders. 30 years. Don't ever overlook our elders. Even that's what I'm finding, is that I am very blessed having 3 of them working with me, but before that I have had a community of elders. Look for those who will listen, educate, support, and never feel that you're on your own, because if you are on your own, who are you working for? Was that okay, Jade?
There was a very similar question that came in online, Carol, which was, you were in many ways a trailblazing Aboriginal woman leader, and you set the pathway for other female leaders. But for other younger Aboriginal female leaders coming up behind you, what would be your advice to them, if there was any extension from what you said, particularly as female leaders?
The people around me I was blessed with. Firstly, you need to recognise who's in your family. Riley taught me a lot. I was involved in the Curtin Council and he was our chair, and I'll never forget that time, and blessed time. But we can make choices. We can make choices ourselves, and I think that's an important part of this. I think a big part of us as women, that my hardest job I ever did was had to manage 120 people. I was 24, Noongars, across 9 towns, and working with them so that you need to have the strength to stand by what you deliver, never promise nothing, and make sure you do something together with people to achieve that. Because I could never do some of the stuff, but I was able to work with people. It's listening, sharing, asking questions. Don't ever think you know it all, because you don't. But also too, you need to give time. Time is really important, what I found in my life. But don't stop doing what you feel like your passion is. I think that's really important. And we as women balance. We balance up the men with all what we do. So that's been a very big part of what I've learned over many years. The balance.
Thank you, Carol. Wise words. Do we have any final questions from the floor before we wrap up this evening's event? Oh, sorry. Apologies. Hi, Ingrid.
Oh, when did you get in the room?
I had so many things on, but I was not missing this for the world, obviously. There is a really big debate here in Noongar country that we need you to address. Who is your favourite niece? And don't worry about upsetting. They'll deal. No, we already know the answer. Moving on. First of all, I don't know how the hell I would have got through the last year without leaders like you. I reckon I'm on that list of 50 that you messaged. I don't know how you knew, but you just knew. So I want to publicly, on behalf of us young, particularly female leaders, thank you, because you've been through this before. You have to go through it again. For us young fellas, we thought we had to protect you, but we realised the whole time it was actually you guys protecting us as per usual. So, and we love and we honour you and treasure you so much for that. I still have the certificate you gave me from the leadership course from 15 years ago. Pulled it out the other day, I go, ooh. Arnie, what's the most memorable moment with an elder that you have had that's really helped you keep on track, like what you've done for us? Who was that person for you?
Oh dear, Ingrid. I've had a lot of elders. I even remember going to the Kimberley and the girls up there saying to me, how come the elders always come and get you to sit with them? I did. I don't know what it was, but we did. I spent a lot of time with elders. But one for me, dear heart, was only Janet Hayden. And I'll never forget when I was at my lowest and I get a phone call from her out of the blue. And I think that was when I realised that we have a relationship. You can't just talk just because you want to bring an elder to do a welcome. It's deeper than that. You know, it's much, much deeper. Auntie Janet, she paved a way for all of us as Noongar women to have a voice very powerfully when she was stepping into the space of ALS and native title and, you know, raising children and caring for all of those things. But she gave time to me, and I really appreciate that. But I also thank Ingrid for many things, because a lot of us, like I honestly wish that my parents were I still had the privilege of having that. And those of you, if your parents are still alive, cherish the moments of that, because that's the grounding of what you learn from and the values of that. So to all the beautiful women in this room and online, and mothers as nurturers, sisters, aunties, you have a pivotal role for the nurturing of that. To all our men who stand strong for all of us, who walk beside us, that care for us, we thank you for that. So in all of this stuff is we need to look at the power of how we can be and do things together.
Wonderful. I think there was one other question on the side there, am I correct?
Yeah. Kaya, Auntie Wandiwa Injabandi Mort, and you're a healing spirit, like what Ingo said. I know you're looking at healing yourself, but you can't help it. You continue to heal country, heal others, and same thing last year. I'm sure everyone that knows, you could say it was the lowest time in my life when I had a bad injury and I was sitting there on the back of the referendum, and you called me and you said you believed in me, and I just think it'd be nice to just hear from you a message of healing, how we can heal together, how you use country to heal you, or just one little thing that you could take away for tonight, like Jodie said, what's some action, but it starts with healing yourself, country and each other. So any tips for people in the room that can do that? Walk the walk with you?
COVID took a lot away from all of us, and I would sneak out of the house. You know how we were only allowed to have an hour? I took off to Kings Park and sat however long I wanted. And I was thinking, I wonder if they'd come and find me to tell me to get away. But I think COVID taught me that, we were locked in our spaces and we could only see backyard fences and whatever, but I did. I took off to the park, I sat there and I had to keep looking out. I missed the hills, even though I lived in the foothills looking up. But for me, country has been a healer for many things. Like when I get really, water becomes a big part of that. And I've learned to throw what energy out that hurts into the water, let it go. And we have to do that because we can't keep turning up to the same problems all the time and not letting go. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're doing the same. We've got to find a space for that. And I remember Richard was telling me in the walks, him and Robin would do, they'd go walking all the time. So I think touching country with your feet, sitting by the water, making time to stop has been a big part of how I've been able to get through a lot of this. And I went away from Noongar country for 18 months. I couldn't go to the ocean because I missed how the water rolled. I couldn't go because there was no sun setting on that water. I was missing home, and I think we need to connect our place and understand sense of place, and we've got to give to that and ourselves, because we can't keep giving if we're not giving to us, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned. Biggest lesson I've learned in my life.
What a wonderful way to reflect on finishing today's presentation. Before we wrap up, I do need to say when you go on country with Auntie Carol, you have to be careful when she tells you that the condongs are very sweet, because they're not. And there is this photographic evidence of me being fed condongs when she's telling me they're lovely and sweet, and it took about 4 hours to recover. So I assure you, just be a little bit careful. But could you please join me? We have a lovely bunch of flowers for Carol and Joe, but also I would like to just for a moment bring up Victoria Laurie, who was the beautiful creator of the memoirs, which you'll get to take home and read, because we do have some flowers for you too, Vicky. So would you please come up on stage and could you acknowledge these wonderful women? So on behalf of Reconciliation WA and our partners tonight, a huge thank you for everyone coming. We will be making tonight's presentation available online, which you'll see on our website and on socials. As we say, reconciliation is everyone's business, but if one word comes from tonight, it's about togetherness and connection. And I think Carol Innes is an incredible person who has led us on that journey over many years, so we thank her for that. Can I remind everyone the Walk for Reconciliation is on Friday, starting at Langley Park at 12 p.m. We're expecting 10,000 plus people, because this year it's all about taking the division from last year and creating unity and solidarity. So please join us at 12 o'clock on Friday, Langley Park to Supreme Court Gardens. We would love to have you there en masse with your staff, colleagues, friends, family, etc. Please come along. Please travel home safely. Thank you all very much for coming tonight and have a lovely evening.